everybody to season 1, episode 1 of the Chasing Joy Show. I am ARHartie. I am blogger and joy strategist at chasing-joy.com. And I'm starting this new show tonight. This is episode 1, and it is just an extension of everything that I've been talking about on the Chasing Joy blog, at Chasing Joy events, and then Chasing Joy social media over the last 10 years. So the Chasing Joy show is where I'm going to have hopefully interesting conversations with people who I feel are great examples of how to chase joy, and or who offer an interesting perspective on ways that we can have more joy in our life. So without further ado, I'm going to ask my guest for tonight, Miss Temwa Wright, to turn her camera on and unmute herself. And we're going to get started with the show. So before I dive into a deep introduction of Temwa, we're going to do something fun. So my favorite icebreaker is 2 truths and a lie. So I've asked Temwa to offer us 2 truths and a lie tonight, and we're going to try and guess which one is the lie.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Hi, Facebook. You're still awake. It's like almost 10:30 at night, but I'm really glad you guys are awake and here with us. So 2 truths and a lie. All right. Number 1, I have 4 children. Number 2, I used to live in Alaska. And number 3, I love Philadelphia. So which one is the lie?
Which one is the lie? So I think I know the lie. So I'm going to see what you guys think. You guys watching, which of those truths, let's call them presumed truths, do we think is not a truth at all, but a lie? Let me know in the comments what you guys think.
And I'm going to repeat them. I'm going to repeat. Okay. I should have done one that's going to stump you, but I was thinking about everybody who's listening. So I should have done one to stump you. But number 1, I have 4 kids. Number 2, I used to live in Alaska. And number 3, I love Philadelphia.
Okay, guys. So I'm going to wait a second because, like I said, there's a couple seconds delay and see what you guys think. Which one is not true? I need some Jeopardy music, right?
I really miss Alex Trebek already.
I know. I was so sad to hear about his passing. Yeah. I've seen online people doing a petition for oh my gosh, the guy who used to do Reading Rainbow. What's his name?
Yep.
I can't think of his name right now.
I can't think of his name either because I just know the song. Every time I think of Reading Rainbow, the theme song comes to my mind. That's what gets stuck in my head.
Right. And he played in Roots. I know him from Roots. And then he was on Jeopardy. Not Jeopardy. He was on oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of that show.
LeVar Burton.
Yes, that's who it is, LeVar Burton.
Thank you, Google.
Google comes in handy. What was the other show he was on? I can't think of what it was called now. The sci-fi show.
Not Star Trek. Was he?
Yes, Star Trek. Yes, he was. He was Geordie LaForge in Star Trek.
I am so not
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
The only one I ever watched was Star Trek: The Next Generation. I watched that with my mom, and he was on that one, so that's why I know it. All right, so a couple people have guessed. So Veronica thinks the lie is that you love Philadelphia. Miss Lily says the lie is that you used to live in Alaska, and Janice says 4 children. So I am going with Janice, and the lie is the 4 children.
That is correct. I only have 3 children. And, but I did used to live in Alaska for like 3 years. And that's where I had my first child. And then I love Philadelphia now, but trust me, in the beginning, it was not a loving relationship. It grew on me.
Wow. So now that we know her lie, so why did you pick that for your lie?
You know what? Because I had to think on the spot. I was like, oh, and you know, if you hesitate too long, then, so I was like, what would be the best thing? And so that I just went with that one for the lie, because I thought, you know, you can never really tell how many kids somebody has, you know, it's tough. It's tough.
Janice is saying, what's her prize? But I feel as though Janice had inside information, so I don't know about that. I see Miss Pat is watching, and Tim is also watching.
Cool.
Tim was my first guest. I was so excited by the overwhelming response when I started to talk to people about wanting to do the show. And it's funny that Temwa ended up being my first guest. I was just talking to my niece, Ambria, who lives with me and who's watching. And I was saying, I feel like for whatever reason, God had a plan and was determined for Temwa and I to be friends, because the way we technically met twice.
That's
for the first time, right? So I know Temwa through my brother Shane, who is watching. I believe they became friends at seminary. I think that's how that went, sort of.
Yeah.
So I met her way back then when both of our lives were very different. She had her daughter, was really, really teeny, and my nieces were really, really teeny, and they were all good friends, like best friends. And now they're all basically grown women, which is crazy.
I still have pictures of them when they were so small and so cute and so tiny. And I just can't believe how much time has gone by. Right. So yeah, my daughter grew up with your, alongside your nieces and nephews.
Yes, and nephews. So that's how we originally met, and we knew each other. I would say more like associates, like we would see each other at family functions of my brothers and whatnot. And I think we hung out maybe once. Yeah. And then I started, so you guys know I work for the government. I don't talk a lot about that part of my life, but I work for the government. And I started a job in a new area, and I met friends. And one girl was like, oh, well, you like to read. You should join my book club. And I was like, okay, yeah, I want to be in a book club. So tell me, I never told you this part of the story. Mm-hmm. So all those years, I thought your name was Tamara. Because I've never seen it written. And Tamara is more common. Everyone would say it so fast. I thought I was hearing Tamara. So my friend invites me to book club, and they send an Evite, and I'm looking at the Evite, and for some reason I stopped on your name, and I was just looking, I was like, Temwa. I was like, huh, that's interesting. And then I kept going down the list, you know, and I go to my first book club, and this group had been going on for, I think, at least a year at that point when I joined. Mm-hmm. So I go, and I'm sitting there, and I was the only Black woman in the room at the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there at the table, we're ready to get started. And in comes Tamara, right? And she walks in, everybody's like, hi. And I was like, oh my God, I know her. And her name apparently is not Tamara.
Yeah, that is so funny you should say that. Because when I first came to the US, I thought people would have such a difficult time with my name. Well, not only did I think that, people had a hard time recalling it because it's not common, right? It's not an English name. And so to make things easier for people, I told them they can just call me Tammy, because I was a little bit more common. So I said, oh, you can just call me Tammy. And this one time I remember I was walking down the street, and this guy was like, Tammy. And I'm like, oh, whoever Tammy is, like, that's so annoying. Can they answer? And I'm like, hey, I'm
you're paying them no mind.
Right. And then after that, I was like, you know what? This is my name. Temwa's my name. People are just going to have to learn it, because I can't like just become a whole new different person, different name. And then after that, I was like, people just have to remember the name.
Right. I like that and I respect it. Whenever I, usually at work at the day job, I come across people whose names I don't automatically know how to pronounce. I make a point to learn it. And if they tell me like, oh, you could just call me so-and-so, I always double check, like, are you sure? Do you really want me to call you this? Because I can learn your name. I will take the time to learn it. So I respect that. So let me give you guys an official intro to Temwa. So I'm getting this from her email, actually. So Temwa Wright is the executive director of Pamoza International, a Christian nonprofit organization working in Malawi, Africa, whose mission is to share the gospel and alleviate poverty and suffering through educational improvements, healthcare, economic empowerment, and food security. Pamoza means together. They work together with the people they serve and together with people like us to help transform the lives of children and families in Malawi and beyond. So when I saw that in her email signature, I was like, I don't even have to ask for a bio because that sums it up pretty well. And you already know she's a mother of 3, not 4, and she's also a wife. So the reason I asked you to be on the show is because of 2 reasons. So all these years that I've known you, the main consistent thing I've noticed about you is you always have a bubbly and joyful air about you. I'm not gonna say you're always happy because no one's always happy, but just in general, you come across as just a joyful, like a happy person. And those are the kind of people that I want to talk to because, and I've mentioned this before in a group, I am not naturally a happy-go-lucky person. People are often surprised by that. But whenever I do those personality tests, I get a score of melancholy.
Interesting.
And so it is work and effort for me to have like a joyful, happy life. And over the years of starting to write the blog when I wasn't happy and different things I tried to do to just have more happiness in my life, I realized that for a lot of us, it's not going to come natural. It is going to require effort. And I want to just give people permission to put in the work to have a happy life, to not sit back and go like, well, it was me. I'm just not happy. Like there are certain things that you can do to improve your odds of happiness in terms of your overall life experience. Not like every day you're going to feel happy. So what would you say is what makes you at least come across that way as this happy, bubbly person? And is that, I don't want to say is it fake, because that's not what I mean, but like, do you feel that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I had no idea that you actually work at it, Arlett. So you're doing a good job. A+.
Thank you.
I have so much to be happy about. I always see the glass half full, and it could be because of my background, my upbringing, my work, because I work in a country. So I'm originally from Malawi, and I work in rural Malawi with people who still live in very under-resourced communities, no running water, no electricity, very few resources, but they never complain. And they always are so appreciative. And so for me, doing that kind of work, there's very little to complain about. Like we have so much above and beyond what we can even ever really need. And so I choose not to complain, number one. But then number two, I've also just found the things that bring me joy and excitement. Like there's certain things I just love to do in life, and I unapologetically do them because that's what I like, you know. So right. I'm really into physical activity. I play tennis all the time. I love playing tennis, and I like being outdoors. I make time for that. I am a workaholic. I work a lot. I like to get things done. So I have my list, and it makes me feel good to accomplish my list. So there's things that I do in my life that are just you know, ways that I choose to live. And these things bring me joy. It doesn't mean that there aren't some things that I have to do. I mean, I'm a mother of 3 and I have a lot of responsibilities, right? But all in all, I think that the perspective that we have more than enough, more than plenty, there's very little to really complain about. Even now during COVID, you and I are able to interact because we have technology.
It's true. Yeah.
There's there's very little to complain about. It's just the choice that you take and how you perceive your life. So that's what I choose. And being happy is more fun. So
I agree. Being happy is more fun, which is why I feel it's worth it to put in the work. So you already touched on like a couple of the things that you naturally do that I have made the effort to do over these last 10 years. So when I started chasing joy, I felt like, well, maybe if I write about happiness, I'll feel happier, right? And so it worked along with some therapy over the years. And then when I reached the point where I was kind of transitioning the brand into also being a business, I took the time to look back over all the things that I'd written. And I realized everything that I'd written could fall into 6 categories that I'd actively worked on. So you already touched on gratitude, right? Mm-hmm. I had actively worked on noticing all the good things. Like you said, we have an abundance of things that are going right all the time that we don't even, people like me, we're not even noticing. You were already noticing. And then like setting goals was another thing. Like you said, you put all the things on your list and you check them off. So that was a second thing. Mm-hmm. Giving back, which is what you do through Pamoza, right? And from just knowing, I think even before in Pamoza, I think you already had a giving spirit, was another thing that I worked on. And then the other things were self-care, faith, and healthy relationships. So when I looked back over all the things I'd written, I realized these are 6 areas that I had really focused on and grown, and improvements in those areas gave me a happier life. So I call those things the pillars of joy, like the 6 pillars of joy. So when I talk to people like you, it makes me feel like, okay, yeah, I was on the right track because you were already doing, you know, a bunch of, and your self-care, because you mentioned there are things you like to do and you unapologetically do them. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit more about Pamoza and what you do there, and how taking on giving back as your profession has impacted your life.
Yeah. Well, before I go into Pamoza, I had to mention one more thing, which I think is really important that I don't know if a lot of people in the US do, but like in my culture, the way you name your child is really significant. And so you always give your children names of meaning. And I've often find that, I don't know if it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but like a lot of the people I know really exude their name, you know, they really like it, you can see like, oh, wow, you really are like your name. They have like that characteristic. And so, we are very careful about how we name our children. And my grandmother named me, I might be getting that wrong. Somebody named me who was important. And so my name, although Temwa, you know me by Temwa, that's actually the short version of my name. And Temwa means love. But my full name is Temweka, which means lovable or beloved. And I always said, well, thank you, Mom, Dad, for giving me that name, or allowing whoever to name me, or grandma. Or there's like a culture who they take turns which side of the family names which kids. But so, you know, I've always felt like I part of just who I am is somebody who I want to be easy to be around. I want people to feel like energized and happy and excited when they're around me, right? Not like feeling drained, like, oh my God, I just spent some time with Temwa. And so it's just something that I think over time, it's just, you know, the meaning of my name has really become very relevant, and I see how is played out. So I just had to put that little caveat there. And I did that with all my children. I actually gave them intentional names too, because of seeing that in my culture, I wanted to be able to move, continue that cultural tradition. My organization. Okay, so Pamoza, like you said, Pamoza means together, and together is a really powerful approach in how you work with people. So we actually have a model based on an African proverb, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go Pamoza, together. And we literally try. You've heard that. Yeah, it's a really famous African proverb, but that's what we really espouse to do in Malawi and all over, because it's much more powerful and much more sustainable when you go together. So Pamoza focuses on Christian outreach, healthcare, education, agriculture, and economic empowerment. It's a very holistic approach of meeting the spiritual and the physical needs of people. We started in one community in rural Malawi, and now we're in 20 communities. We serve about 30,000 people now. And I've been executive director of Pamoza since 2013. And since then, I'm blown away, because I always say God is doing amazing things. I can't take credit. Pamoza can't take credit. We're just part of his work, and it's a joy. And I always say, like, God doesn't need you to do the work, but he allows you for your own development and for his glory. And so I'm always excited that he's given me the opportunity to develop by serving him in a ministry like Pamoza. So it's really exciting. I love it. And I think that sometimes one of my prayers for people is that they will find their purpose in life, because when you have a purpose-driven life, when you wake up, you're excited. Like what do I need to do next? What am I going to tackle today? Like, it's just so exciting to live a life of purpose. And I have found that purpose serving people in Malawi, primarily because as immigrants, it wasn't easy being here, but we feel that we've been blessed to have access to so many amenities in the US, but not just blessed to be comfortable. We've been blessed to be a blessing. And that's why I do the work that I do.
That's really amazing. For those who are watching, I'd love to know in the comments if you guys feel that you know what your purpose is, or if you're still working towards finding it. So my purpose is to help people chase joy. I've realized that maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when it all kind of came together for me, because growing up, I felt like I didn't have a talent, like nothing that stood out. So like, my brother, Shane, was like this track star. I have another brother who was always very talented with music and could draw. And then Shane's really personable. He's a pastor now, which makes sense. People just love him. He doesn't do anything and they love him, and it's great. But like, I didn't have any of those things that stood out about me. And I would just wonder, like, what is my talent? And I was reading a scripture, and I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was talking about different gifts that God gives you. And I saw that one of the gifts was encouragement. And I was like, that's me. That's my thing. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense, because through my whole, I'll say late teen years and adult life, everybody would tell me their secret inventions that they want to make, their books they want to write, no matter what. Strangers would come up to me and have these weird conversations, and I'd be annoyed, like, why are they telling me their business? And so when I read that, I was like, oh, because I encourage people. That's my thing. And so I feel much more content understanding what I'm supposed to be doing, like what my purpose is supposed to do. And then my experience with happiness, like, oh, okay, yeah, because everyone doesn't naturally know that you can work on these things and feel better. So interesting thing this morning, so our faith is one of the pillars of joy. For me, I'm Christian. So that's always been a major part of my life. So this morning I was attending a Bible study that I started just like now 3 weeks at my aunt's church. And so the Bible said that you're supposed to read, right? The Bible lessons every day. I ain't read nothing, right? I just listen. So I don't even know what they're going to talk about. So they're talking about work, right?
Okay.
And I never thought about this, but how in the Garden of Eden, like before sin was introduced, there was work.
Right.
That Adam and Eve had jobs.
Right.
And it clicked for me, like, oh, so this is why we're all kind of searching for this purpose, because it's already ordained in us that we are supposed to work.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about you, because I was thinking about us doing the show tonight, and I was like, oh, and Temwa was one of the lucky people whose work aligns with her passion. Yeah. And I don't think that's most people get to have that. And I honestly don't even think it's a realistic goal for everyone to have that as their source of income.
Right.
Okay. I think everyone should work to find their passion and should do work in that. But for some of us, it's going to be charitable work or hobby work.
Yes.
I think it's too much pressure to assume that you're supposed to make your livelihood
survive off of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But I think you're one of the lucky people that it seems like it has aligned that way for you. So before Pamoza, when your passion wasn't necessarily as directly aligned, how did you still work in your purpose when you had other jobs?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's funny because like, it's easier to see things in retrospect, right? I can look back at all the different jobs I had, the different roles I played, and say, oh, wow, Lord, you were preparing me for such a time as this. And even now, he's preparing me for such a time as to come. So I'm always excited. I don't know why. It's like, it could be a blessing and a curse, but I always think 5 years or 10 years down the line, and I'm always really excited. Because if I'm going through something and it might be challenging, I'm like, wow, in 10 years, this is going to be like nothing. I'm going to look back like, remember when baby Joy Chaser wouldn't go down on, to sleep at the right time. And it's like,
yes.
you just, you look back. So I know that God has a plan and a purpose, and a lot of the things we're engaged in ultimately all lead to preparing us for that. So how I still found joy, I've always been very community centric. I can't help but volunteering for things and starting things and leading things. Even now, although Pamoza is my primary job, like, I'm block captain on my block. I do these weekly power hour cleanups in Cobbs Creek where I live, because I'm like, I don't want mess in my community. Come on, people, let's clean up. Who's going to clean up with me? Like, that's just how I'm wired, to notice problems in the community and do something about it. Because why wait for someone else to do something about it, right? So I've always been like that. And then the funny thing is, when God called me to do missions full time, and Pamoza is like a missions organization, because we really, our core work is reaching people with the gospel, but also in a holistic way that doesn't neglect all the other needs that they have. But when he called me, I was like, I don't know if you have the right person. I don't think I have the skills for this. I don't know how to do blah, blah, blah. There was all these excuses. And what happened was he used non-related secular activity to expose a gift that I had. And then he exposed that gift and then said, now use this for my purpose. And
have you heard that saying, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called?
And I've heard it said, like, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And exactly that's what happened to me. I really felt like, I don't know if you got the right person, but he showed me that, because sometimes you look at your gifts in comparison to other people's gifts. And you were saying this,
That's
right?
What I was doing, yep.
You are like, I'm not an athlete. I'm not like this person that's like, oh, everybody like very charismatic. But he gave you your own special gift and talent as an encourager. And so the gift and talent he showed me is I have the power of speech. When I'm really passionate about something, it just exudes out and people are drawn to the zeal and the passion that I'm speaking with when I really care about something. And I only found that out when my kids' school, all my children attend the school district of Philadelphia. Now my daughter, who's in college, she graduated from the Philadelphia school district. So everybody has gone through it. But one of the school they were at the time was slated for closure, and they were trying to close this school. And I really loved this school. And I remember we were at this meeting at the school board. It's the School Reform Commission, but it's basically our school board before. And so the SRC, the School Reform Commission, had announced that this school, my kids' school, was going to be closed. I was like, I don't think so. So all of a sudden, we get out of this meeting and there's all these cameras and news reporters, and they're like, what do you think about that? You're a parent, right? And then I'm just blah, 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 blah. And then I see some of my colleagues from the school. It's E.M. Stanton School. It's in South Philly. So some of my colleagues from South Philly, from the school, they look at me to say, that's our spokesperson. She's gonna be our spokesperson, and we're gonna save the school. And we did save the school. It was like a 9-month battle. We were testifying all the time, but he used this 9-month process to show me that I had the gift to influence people to listen to something that really mattered to me, And so after that, here's the dangerous thing is, after we were able to keep the school from closing, I started getting all of these invitations like, hey, can you be on this committee? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I kid you not, I heard God's voice so clearly say to me, now I've exposed that gift to you, but don't prostitute the gift. It's not intended for you it was for a season for you to learn. That's why you went through this, but it wasn't intended for you to be in this lifelong public education advocacy, I really love public education advocacy, but that wasn't what he had called me to. He just made me go through the experience so I could have confidence in the gift that he's given me for his particular purpose for me. So I had to realize that season was over. Now it was time to turn it to what he had called me for.
So I have the Facebook feed on my cell phone, so hearts are going up. People are liking what you're saying. And Sheree has said, super wonderful. Miss Lily. So the ladies who I'll give them special acknowledgement, Miss Lily and Miss Pat, who are watching, are baby joy chasers, daycare teachers who still care so much about him, though we haven't been able to see them really. It's so long now. But they're watching. Miss Lily says that she's learning something different from everyone every day. And Shane said, amazing that he remembers that when you, I guess, were fighting for the school thing.
Yeah.
So you said something too that was said this morning in the Bible study. And my aunt was giving a Bible study today. So my Aunt Carol said that often the work that God wants you to do is what's right in front of you. So like when you were talking about, like, you don't want your community to be dirty and things, like you see things that probably other people just bypass and then their tunnel vision. So I'll ask you, hi Aunt Faith. Aunt Faith's watching now too. I'll ask you, I'll share what I think, and then I'll ask you, for people who feel they don't know what their purpose is, I think they should look right in front of them and see what are the things that you notice that other people seem to not, because that's probably what you're supposed to be doing. So that's what I think. What words of wisdom do you have to offer for people who don't know what their purpose might be?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we are consistently who we are, like our personalities. So often your purpose is already very much aligned with who you are and who you've always been. I've always been very communal in the sense of like doing things in the community service, being a spokesperson, wanting to do things, you know, to improve the quality of life and stuff, to the point I had actually forgotten, and I was cleaning up some papers and I saw a letter of recommendation that a high school teacher had written for me for a college scholarship. And she was like, "Oh, Temwa should definitely get the scholarship. She volunteers at the soup kitchen. She's president of the help club." And I was like, I was doing that. I totally forgot. I have a bad memory, really bad. And I was like, I was doing that. And that was more than 20 years ago. I'm almost 40. That was like a long time ago, but I'm still consistently that. So I think when searching for your purpose, yes, you don't have to look far, one. And two, it would never be anything that's not already aligned with who you really are, the things that come naturally to you. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did actually a lot of praying and fasting when I felt God calling me, because I was like, I just don't know if I could do it, you know? And that time and period of just really fasting and praying about it was super helpful, because I needed things to be said to me in a way that I could understand them. And so for me, I just had to make sure it really was God's voice I was hearing and not something else. And so what started happening is, as I was praying and fasting about it, like, really let me know if this is really what you want me to do next, God. Well, he showed me by closing certain doors and certain opportunities that were things that would not normally be closed. And I was like, wait, why is this happening? All of a sudden, I was sitting at my regular job at the time. I had been at this job like 7 years, and I would be in a meeting and I would be itching, like, I gotta get out of this place. Like, what? And I've always been comfortable there. So I use the analogy of like when a plane is about to land and it say it's dark and there's that landing strip and you have the lights lighting it and you have the people guiding it, and it's like, this is it, land right here, right on this path, right here. But that comes with really searching for discernment, and it's okay to take time and say, well, is this really it? And if you don't know, be prayerful about it. I mean, it works for me because I'm a Christian. And if you're not a Christian, I think just, you know, taking time to really see what things you already naturally drawn to that you've always done. Usually that's what it ends up being. But once you get it, I kid you not, it's a whole different level of joy and contentment.
I really, really like that analogy. I think that's super powerful. Just the visual of everything going dark and the landing strip being like, this is where you're supposed to be. I think that's awesome. Yeah. So we've been talking almost an hour already.
Wow, that's crazy. Where does time go?
Time goes fast when we're having fun. So I'd already planned to ask you this, but Shane, see, he told you, so charismatic, right? He just knows what to ask. He's already asked in the comments, how are you working intentionally during COVID? So
I shouldn't say I love COVID. I shouldn't say that. But COVID has really been a blessing to me because it's forced me to slow down. I only have one speed, fast, and 1 decibel level, loud. I only know how to do things fast and loud. So with COVID, it's like everything got canceled. A lot of things, I had no more excuses for certain things that I had been putting off, including time with God. And so the thing that I have done that's been the most intentional, I kid you not, is I'm a morning person. I wake up with a lot of energy. I've been up since 5 o'clock today. And as soon as I wake up, I'm ready to work because I'm a list person. I got my list, I got da-da-da-da. And I every morning I have to give my best to God. So I always start with Bible study. And I'm kind of like a solo. I fly solo for the most part when it comes to like, like if I want to get fit, I'll just decide, okay, I'm going to get fit. And I'll do that by myself. I don't necessarily need to join a fitness group or run with somebody, because I just decide to do it whenever and I'm random. But what I've done differently during COVID is there's these two ladies I met during another, like an online Bible study group I participated in at random. One of my friends has a church and he was doing this Bible study group using a method called SOAP, Scripture, Observation, Application, and Prayer, SOAP. You go through one chapter a day, and then you highlight the scripture that stood out to you. You talk about your observations, and then what your application is going to be from that chapter, and then what your prayer requests are. I was like, oh, I really like this. So we did like the 7-day SOAP study. And at the end of the 7 days, I was like, I want to continue this. And I put it in the chat. I think there was probably like, I don't know, 20 people who were on this. And I put it in the chat. Is there anybody here who's a morning person that wants to continue doing SOAP? And these two ladies were like, yeah, we're down. We'll do it. That was June 13. We started. And every day at 7 a.m., we get together and we have a SOAP Bible study. And we've never missed a day. And then we have all of these rituals. It's usually about an hour to an hour and a half every morning. And now we're so close. We went from not even knowing each other to like having this very close fellowship and relationship and growing together. And we have a name. We call ourselves the Gems. So Gems is growing nice. Every day, meaningfully squad. So, I like it. It's really great. And that's what I've really been appreciating the most, is that's usually time I wouldn't have normally have given to God, because I was always on the run, always busy. In the morning, I'll be screaming at my kids, get out the house. You're going to miss the bus. Wake up. Like, it was always go, 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 go. And now it's like, this is good. I'm going to spend time with the Lord. And I've really enjoyed that. My time with the Gems is so invaluable. And we have all this great rituals that we do together. We believe in taking a Sabbath day. We, have monthly chat and choose. We write letters every month to each other about the different growth. It's just great. It's really, really cool. So I love that part.
I love that you guys have a name. Because the blogger in me is like, it's not real if there's no hashtags. So it's like hashtag Gems. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, the pandemic has been really rough. But I will say I've spiritually grown also, because I accidentally joined a Bible study on Revelations.
Oh, wow.
And I had yeah, exactly. That was my thing. That's what I said. And it's really been a good thing for me. And that's ended now. And now I'm just doing my aunt's weekly Bible study with her church. But it's interesting that this period where we have to slow down, a lot of people I think are probably experiencing similar things where getting in touch with their faith. Have you, other than your Gems, have you learned anything new or picked up any new hobbies or anything?
Oh my
Since
goodness.
You can't do a lot of the things you might have done before?
Yeah. It's funny because last year, was it last year or the year before last? I said, I need to learn how to swim. And I text a couple of other Black girls who never learned how to swim, because water, Black girls, hair. Okay, we're not doing all that. Very few of us are in the water. Come on. So we learned how to swim together, and it was really fun. I haven't kept up with it because I'm still not really a good swimmer, but I could, if I really put my heart in it. So I love learning new things. This year, in addition to spending lots of time on the tennis courts, because I love tennis, so I've improved my tennis game. And I just picked that up last year as well. I've been doing more gardening. My husband and I gardening a lot. We grew sweet potatoes this year. We have a fig tree, apple tree, pear tree. This is a little itty bitty. I live in the city. I live in the city. So, I mean, our yard isn't huge, but we're just learning different methodologies to grow various crops together. And my husband is like a natural horticulturalist. He has a green thumb. I have a brown thumb, literally, figuratively. I kill things, but he's like taught me a lot of things. So yeah, we grew tomatoes and basil and oh my gosh, bell peppers and cucumbers, squash. And now just like harvesting all sorts of stuff right from the garden. It was really great. And now we want to adopt gardens. Like we want to adopt our neighbors' yards who they're not doing anything with, because we have even more plans to grow more stuff. So I think that's the one thing I probably did more of, learned more.
Now, did you already have the trees, or you put the trees in?
Oh, they were planted. The tree project is really my husband, because I said, honey, these are a lot of trees. He's like on a mission. For every tree that gets cut down in Philly, I swear he plants one in our backyard. We have like 10 trees. He's like on a mission to like vengeance for all the cut down trees. But yeah, he planted all of them, and then he learned there's a method where you can prune them and train them to grow like horizontally as opposed to really tall, because a lot of people have fears about trees. Just, they're hard to manage, they uproot sidewalks, but you can train trees, and this is what he's going to do.
So I'll share, I guess I'll call it a quirk about me. So growing up, my mom would plant stuff in our inner city backyard as well. And she would like grow strawberries and tomatoes and cucumbers. And one year we grew corn, which I really liked, because at that time I was a little kid. And so the stalks were taller than me. But I think negative side effect of that experience was a couple times like mice got to our strawberries and like messed the crop up. And it just stood out in my mind and like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to eat the food that the animals have been all on. And even though I know that the stuff I get from the grocery store or farmer's market, the same thing has happened, but I could kind of remove myself from it. So I'm a little turned off by the idea of me growing something and seeing like a stray cat in my garden. But I think I could get with trees because they grow up and the fruit's off the ground. I'm like, I could maybe do a tree. So I'll reach out about that because that sounds interesting. Maybe I could do the tree.
Well, James, my husband, would love to give you all the trees you want. Because he's also learning how to propagate them and how to make more trees from existing trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I could do a lemon tree. I really like lemon a lot.
Okay.
I could do a lemon tree. That sounds appealing.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. That's in his department. You have to find out what grows here. Wow, because some things don't. But know. So that's been really fun.
Yeah.
And
so I've not gotten into gardening.
No, I see you still don't want the animals.
Well, I don't mind that they're there, because whenever there's an animal, especially like, I moved a year or so ago now, and there are different animals here than in my old, even though there were animals in my old neighborhood. So every now and then I'll see, I think like gophers in my yard, and there's still stray cats, not as many as my old neighborhood, but there's stray cats. I was warned that there are skunks. I haven't seen them here. I'm not really bothered that they're there. I just don't want to eat the food that they have like peed on. Like that's what is happening in my mind. I'm like, I don't want to do that. But I think a tree might be a good thing. So the biggest thing that I learned in terms of a skill during the pandemic, I learned how to do my hair. So I did my crochet braids myself. These are a little old. Well, it looks good in the front.
Yes.
But that's all I'm concerned about. Because nobody's seeing the back of my head because I'm home, right?
That's right.
So that's like the skill that I've developed so far.
That is
the only other skill I don't think I've developed it, but I've definitely been exercising, is being more flexible, especially having a toddler, because the routine that works at 18 months doesn't work at 24 months and doesn't work at 2.5. So we just switched up to a new routine this week that seems to be working. Cross my fingers. So
yes.
Yeah, and I'm not naturally a super flexible person. I come across that way because I'm largely not, I don't want to say I'm not vested, but like I'm not bothered by what other people are doing. So I'm not necessarily rigid, imposing my rigidity on others. But for me, it's like I like to do certain things a certain way in a certain order. And so when I have to then change it up, I'm like, oh gosh, like now I got to figure something new out. So I'm definitely having to exercise that flexibility muscle. Yeah. All right. So before I ask my last two more kind of fun questions, I'm going to see if you guys watching have questions. Now's your time to drop them. I think some people probably already asked a few. Drop them in the comments so we can ask them of Temwa or myself before we end for the night. Miss Lily says, this is more of a question I would think for James. How can you prevent animals from getting into the crop?
Oh, that is, yes, it is hard. We mostly just have squirrels, but then they eat some of the apples and the cucumbers and the tomatoes. And sometimes they'll waste them and throw them. So James has a contraption that he's putting together. It's like netting. He's going to be draping over. Look, I don't know. The horticulturalist in him is figuring out some way where he will be covering the plants, because we have a fence around our yard. So he's going to attach like almost like create a canopy with like a, I don't even know what you call it, but whatever, else for lack of a better word, some netting, and cover the plants so that they won't get, attacked by some of our street animals.
Well, now that you're in our group, when James builds this, probably when the weather warms, definitely post a picture.
I definitely will.
Here's what we're doing to keep our garden joyful and animal free.
Absolutely.
Veronica, she's saying, I think she can relate to what I was saying about the animals being on the food. She was saying when she was abroad, that's why people stopped eating meat when she went abroad, because they could see the chickens walking around on the campus. Yeah, I don't want to think about where my food comes from. That's my privilege speaking. Yeah. I get to not think about it, and I'll enjoy that. Hi, Davida. Davita's watching. I was thinking about Davida when you were talking about swimming, because I know her sorority had a whole campaign with getting, I think it was Black kids, though I don't know for sure, to learn how to swim. All right, so any guys, I'm going to give it a few more seconds because I know there's a little bit of a delay between when I can see your comments and when I'm asking. If you guys have any more questions for Temwa before we end for the night. I do want to thank you, especially now that you expressed how much of a morning person you are. I am not a morning person. And because of the changing of the different routines with the baby, our days are his day is way later. So he goes to bed later, because I do get up early for the day job, though I'm not a morning person, so that I can have at least a couple hours in the morning without him being all over me to do some work. So I put him to bed late, and then he gets up late. So everything's later. So and the childcare is limited right now because of the pandemic. So this is really my only window. And I had the idea for the show, and I've been encouraged by people, including my sister-in-law who's watching. Janice had mentioned a while back that I should start a show one day. And I was like, well, I have to make it work, because this is my calling, right? It's a thing. I can't escape it. I haven't successfully, or I'll say routinely, blogged most of this year. It's been really, I haven't blogged in months. And then after I had the baby, it was sporadic. But I still keep finding ways to be active in the spirit of chasing joy in social media and now with the show. So I thank you for staying up late.
It's okay.
And bringing your full energetic self at 7 o'clock at night.
It was such an honor to be your first guest. It was such an honorable position. So I appreciate you. And I thank you for selecting me for that prestigious position of first guest on the Joy Chaser show. But also my husband's a night owl. So although I'm a morning person, I've learned to be an anytime person. Because he likes to talk at night and I like to talk in the morning. He's like, why are you so loud? It's like 5 a.m. And I'm like, why are you trying to talk to me? It's 11 o'clock at night. So
again, another lesson in flexibility.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any new questions coming in, so I'll end it with my 2 fun questions. So for those who remember a couple years ago, I used to have the Chasing Joy newsletter where it was the same kind of thing that we're doing now, live via Zoom and live streaming on Facebook. I would do this quarterly newsletter, mostly with women who were great examples of chasing joy. And I would always include in the letter these 2 fun questions. So I'm going to keep that same spirit here in the show. And the answers are probably more challenging given the pandemic. But what was the last trip that you went on? Okay. And what was the last movie that you saw?
Okay, trip. Oh, you know what? I'll do a local trip because I do go to Malawi every year for work. And this year was canceled, so that sucks. But my husband and I, for our anniversary in August, we went to Aquaba. It's a bed and breakfast, a Black-owned bed and breakfast. I think it was actually featured on the Oprah network, and it's in the Poconos. So this lady, is her name Michelle?
Is it in University City?
No, well, there's one in University City, but we went to the one in the Poconos. So she basically rehabs old mansions and into bed and breakfast. Oh my God, we had such a great time. I had such a great time there. And that was really such an excellent, professional, just wonderful establishment. I love how she took care of it. She was there on site, although she has like multiple sites, including one in DC and one in Brooklyn. But I really liked it. And we didn't go far, but it just was really great. So that's the last trip.
I heard about that. I think I had saw her on Instagram when she reopened during COVID, and she did a tour of showing the different precautions and things that they were doing. I was like,
I felt
okay, so now
it was
been
great.
there. Okay.
I was there. It was so nice. And was it Davida who does the swim stuff? They have an Olympic-sized pool there. So it was just great. So we intentionally wanted to support a Black-owned bed and breakfast because we had a lot of other options, but that was really fun. And the last movie, I'm not really a movie person, but when I do watch movies, I like chick flicks, like rom-coms. And so I watched one called on Netflix called a Holly Date. So it's basically it's like this guy and girl who are always single at holiday events, and so they decide to become each other's Holly dates. So whenever they have a holiday event, they're each other's date. And it was cute. And then in the end they end up falling for each other. But I liked it. It was really fun. I like simple, nice, funny, nothing too crazy and dramatic type of movies. So that was a fun one.
Nice. I have to look for that one. I like rom-coms as well. And Saturday nights is usually when I say, okay, I can watch a movie after the baby is down because I don't have to be up super early in the morning. And on Fridays, I've been doing this Zoom with my friends where we end up talking to all hours of the night. So Saturday, I was like, okay, Saturday I can pick a movie to watch because I can stay up for a whole 2 hours and watch it. So I'll have to look for that one.
Wow, that's really living the life now. You can stay up late all
Right,
night
right.
and watch a movie.
I can watch a movie, right? No clubs.
No clubs, just movie night, uninterrupted.
Right, yes, right.
It's the simple
Um,
things.
so you did remind me of an important question that I wanted to ask when you mentioned Oprah. So even though we're supposed to be ending, but I definitely want to touch on this and get your perspective. So when you were talking about basically all the gratitude and like kind of the things we take for granted because we have so much access here, and how the people in Malawi, I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but like they don't complain, right? Mm-hmm. So I was listening to, it was just a snippet of Oprah talking about her girls' school that I think is in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And one of the students was depressed, and like the other students were reaching out, like, you got to talk to this girl, like she's not socializing, she's not eating, she's not coming out of her room, like a lot of really red flags for depression. And when Oprah talked to her, they were like, this is Oprah saying, she was talking to her and they were going over this list of like all the signs of depression. And the girl was agreeing that yes, that she's experiencing all of those. And so Oprah was saying, well, I feel like you're depressed and we need to like make sure you talk to someone. And the girl's response was, well, I can't be depressed. I'm African. We don't get depressed. And so I'm just interested on your perspective on that, especially with the like there's no complaining kind of thing. Like on one hand it can be really good, but can it ever become like toxic in a way?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, you opening up a can of worms here.
I know, right at the end we're supposed to be ending on a fun question, but it was too important for me not to mention.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, I have a deeper appreciation now for mental health because I live in the US, but the African in me still has a really hard time with accepting a lot of labels, a lot the mental health profession. And I went to school for social work, but I still have a very hard time accepting it because a lot of the time in our cultures, a lot of that is definitely brushed off, you know, like yeah, it's not really respected and appreciated when somebody is dealing with that level. I don't ever remember anyone having depression, confessing they have depression, struggling with something similar to that. And I'm sure they did. It's just not really acknowledged as much as here, where here you'd probably go to that assumption earlier, you know, hey, something doesn't seem right. Maybe you're struggling with depression. And whereby there, it might be more like, oh, if you feel sad, it's probably something that has happened in your life. Did somebody pass away? Maybe it's never like I don't know. So I just I never really and it's funny because now even when I interact with my parents, I remember that they recently just told me, oh, listen, you've been saying I'm so busy, I'm so tired often. I think I suggest you not say that so much. You know, the kids would just think, oh, mom is so busy all the time. I was like, oh, okay. So they were telling me, don't complain about being tired and busy all the time, right? And I talked to my friend, my African-American friend, and she says, oh, that's what your parents called you to talk to you about? Did they give you any suggestions for how to deal with stress and busyness? I'm like, no, why would they? I didn't even think of it like
they just said stop talking about it.
Stop talking about it. Stop complaining about being stressed. And she's thinking, did they give you strategies for how to deal with the stress? And I'm like, why would they? Just stop complaining about it. So it's just a different I think it's a different, it's almost like get over it type of response. Now I'm not saying that's right, but I think most of the time that's, unless somebody has died, usually that's something people would know in mourning. But
I think probably just finding the balance
Yeah.
between the two. I first went to therapy after my dad died, so grief definitely triggered it. But I still respect that she never diagnosed me with anything. Like she never said, "Oh, you have blah blah blah." I looked it up because I was using my insurance and they got to put a code, and I'm that person that looks up everything. So I looked it up, and it was like anxiety and some other. There was like a couple different forms of anxiety, and then something about like event driven something. And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds about right. But I appreciated that she didn't apply a label to me. And I do think sometimes we're very quick to label, maybe quicker than we should be, especially if it's not necessary for resources. Sometimes you need to do that for kids for certain resources and stuff. But so I think maybe there is some things we do need to toughen up and get over, but it's important to know that we don't have to get over it alone though. We can use resources. So maybe a balance thing.
Definitely. That's a good answer, because I think on our side we're too dismissive, and then I think on the other side it could be too much labeling and too kind of using that as a clutch. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. And even here I've been pretty transparent here in our group, but with the pandemic I've reached back out to an old therapist that I talk to, and I talk to her like once every other week. And it's just super helpful to me. And again, there's never been any diagnosis or label placed on me, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I'll end it on a lighter note. I'll answer the same two questions since I kind of took us deep again, right? So the last trip that I went on was Thanksgiving. I quarantined. Me and my son, we quarantined for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so that we could go to Maryland and visit my aunts there. And so that was nice. And it felt normal. Like the 2 times that I've done that quarantine and then gone and visited them is the closest I felt to normal since the pandemic started, because visiting them was normal. And because we quarantined, we didn't have to like wear masks in the house the whole time. And it just felt like a normal visit, even though we didn't do anything outside, but we typically wouldn't do a whole bunch outside other than maybe go to the mall. So other than that felt normal. So that was the last trip that I've been on. And the last movie that I watched, I have the Disney Plus streaming service. I have all the streaming services because I don't go anywhere. So I started watching all of the Marvel movies in order of release. So not just last week, Sunday, while I was doing some cleaning, I watched Guardians of the Galaxy. Didn't love it, but I watched it, so at least I know what everybody was talking about. So that was the last movie that I watched.
That's really cool. I never watched all of them in order, but I do like Marvel movies. Yeah.
I do too, but I had never watched that one.
Yeah.
And so now I watched it and I'm like, oh yeah, I understand why I never watched it. It's more sci-fi. Yeah, it felt more sci-fi than superhero. Yeah. And I like superhero kind of. So, but I'll be on to the next one. It's fun watching them and I'm watching them. So apparently there's 2 ways you can watch them. I'm watching them in the order that they were released. But you can also watch them in the order that the characters take place. Because like how Captain America was like from World War II. Yeah. So like you could technically start with him, even though he wasn't the first Marvel movie. So it's a couple ways, but I'm watching them in the order of release. So that's my I don't have to think kind of TV or movie. It's not too deep. It's action, and sometimes they have a little humor in there. So that's the last movie I watched. So Shrey says hated it. I'm assuming you're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. So I want to thank you so much for being on the show, being my very first guest. I feel we set the bar high. I feel like I'm going to have to keep the same energy throughout the whole season, but We have good people lined up. Next week is going to be Chanel Snyder. Those of you in the group, those of you who are in the group who joined the group after coming to in-person Chasing Joy events, you will know her as my official photographer of all Chasing Joy events for the last several years. So you're gonna get to know a new side of her next Saturday.
It means that you gotta have to come back next time to make sure you hear.
And I hope you guys will join us for episode 2 next week.
Bye, everybody.